I'm your host, Tim Williams. We are here to recap the world in cricket. And I say it every week. What a week in cricket it has been, but seriously, this week was something special. A famous SCG test and conclusion to the Border-Gavaskar test series between Australia and India. Tons of else cricket going on elsewhere, but that was the big one. That was the big one. Here to recap it with us is Cricket Australia commentator and former Sydney Sixers media manager, Max Bryden. Maxie, how are you, mate? Have you come down from the high yet?
Oh, Timo, I'll tell you what, mate. I was sitting there at the pub on Saturday watching day two with my friends, and not only could we not look away, but everyone was just so nervous. And I think the thing that we realised after a while, sitting in there, the beers were going down like razor blades. Was it like Sydney isn't built for this kind of tension? We have had years of test matches which mean nothing because the series has decided, or have been rained out, or they're on absolute flat pitches that offer absolutely nothing. And I almost couldn't handle the drama. I think I've only just gotten back to sleep after that test, but I'm very excited to be here today and to chop it up with you and Rando.
What was remarkable was that across the five test series, there's some pretty convincing Australian victories in terms of result, and you felt like we were relatively dominant throughout. But despite all of that, going into the last day, there was still a chance that the series would end in a draw and that India would retain the Border-Gavaskar trophy for yet another year. So, fortunately, as Australians, it didn't play out that way, but it was an incredible series of cricket from both sides for many different reasons. Also with us today, the man with the best and most random stats in sport. It's Random Stats Guy, back from New Zealand. And, mate, you've lost a bit of that Northern Beaches tan, I can see from that time over in NZ.
Thanks, guys. No, I had a good New Year's over NZ. Not as much sun as I would have expected in Australia, but luckily the sun was shining on Sydney, so we could get a result in that test match. It was great fun. Had to wait 2 extra hours to watch the test match go off over there, but still worth the wait. Great to see Australia get the series win. Very nervous, though, even with the total of 165 to win. Wasn't ever comfortable at all.
Yeah, thankfully, a certain Jasprit Bumrah was not available for that. Again, from an Aussie cricket fan's perspective, robbed the game of a particularly enthralling finish. But we'll get to that later. Guys, if you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're listening on Apple, Spotify, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff to support the podcast and the time that does go into it. And guys, if you are watching on YouTube, let us know in the comments if you don't agree with something, and I'm certain that there'll be a lot of that. Let us know. Give us your thoughts and let us have it. On today's show, we will review the major talking points from the Australia v India Border-Gavaskar Test Series, concluding at the SCG. We're going to talk Boland versus Hazlewood, Webster versus Green. Who are we picking for the World Test Championships final at Lord's in June? We're going to talk about Bumrah's stunning series. Could India have won the final test on that final day if he wasn't injured? And India's treatment of Sam Konstas, fair or unfair? With 3 Aussies on the panel, I have a feeling I know which way that one's going to go, but you never know. You never know. Rando's going to have his stats trivia, collating some of the best of the data in sport. He finds the absolute greatest stuff on the planet, turns it into trivia. Then me and Maxie go head-to-head to see who can win this week. We then go into the best performances in world cricket over the past week to name our World 11 with the race to the mace heating up. The conclusion of the Australian summer of cricket, actually. We're pretty well done with it, aside from the Big Bash, of course. Now, boys, let's get into it. The recap of Australia v India at the SCG and the series in general. Australia claiming the Border-Gavaskar trophy with a 3-1 series victory at the Sydney Cricket Ground. I was at that one, had an absolute ball there. It's locked Australia in for the World Test Championships. We play South Africa on June 11 at Lord's. And the quote from Sunil Gavaskar from the test that finished within 2.5 days at the Sydney Cricket Ground was that one the cows could have gone and grazed on. He said that to ABC Sport. He said, this is not the ideal test match pitch that you want because you want it to go into a 4th or the 5th day unless there is rain, and I don't see us being here on day 4. You were correct, Sunil. All hell would have broken loose if in India there would have been all kinds of innuendos, all sorts of comments about, is this a good pitch? Max, I'll start with you, mate. An incredible test series. The Aussies got the job done. Sonny Gavaskar wasn't happy with the pitch. What'd you make of the whole series in general? Like, it was something special.
It was something special, and I think that as much as I am a lover of Test cricket, I think that if you are true to analysing the game, you probably realise that Test cricket in Australia for the last few years, it's been very mediocre, and it's been years since we had a series that was really competitive and compelling and watch every ball. And I think the thing that I have grown to know and appreciate is when you watch Test cricket overseas in countries like India, countries like England, where you have this constant contest in the conditions between bat and ball. It's so much more compelling. And yet for decades, Australians, we just got used to flat decks, big alphas going out there scoring 500 or 600 runs in the first innings, knocking over teams for 250, and then it was really a race against time to get that 20th wicket and win. And I know I got bored of that type of cricket, and I've drifted much more towards shorter formats of the game where there's always going to be a result. But for me, the pitches, the conditions, the battle between bat and ball, Jasprit Bumrah, the fire of Virat Kohli, I think that this is the greatest series that we have seen on our home soil that I can remember. Probably going back as to some of those South African series where they came and really took it to us, or even potentially, if you get a little bit greedy, that 06-07 Ashes where we returned serve after losing the Ashes against England and gave them a 5-0 get off our shores. That was fun for different reasons, but I thought it was absolutely amazing. Look, was the pitch good? I don't think so, but I think that at least it was consistently bad for both teams. I don't think there was necessarily an advantage for batting first, for batting last. It was difficult throughout the game, and it really, really brought in for me some of those more aggressive players and those aggressive tactics of the likes of Rishabh Pant. And of course, we saw the impact that Beau Webster was able to have. I was shocked that the curator did it in the first place. I thought we'd get a flatty just so we could basically lock in the draw. As I mentioned in Sydney, that's something we're absolutely used to. But at least in the end of the day, we had this captivating game for 2.5 days that we could not look away from, which for me, the result went the right way, and I enjoyed that about it.
Exactly right, mate. A bit shorter than we would have all hoped for as cricket fans, but said we could not look away for one moment, and not to suggest that Sonny Gavaskar has suggested this, but any Indians out there saying, the pitch was doctored for Australia and this and that. The first thing is that curators on their home continent will doctor pitches all around the world. We see it time and time again, and there's blow-ups about it. If Australia wanted to doctor that pitch, the curators of the SCG, as you said, Maxie, it would have been an absolute road, and it would have been a draw. They would have called it halfway through day 5 because there would have been so many runs and so far from a result. Rando, what about yourself, mate? What do you make of the series?
I thought, as Maxie said, one of the great series that I've seen down in Australia. Usually we are used to smashing teams. Of course, West Indies getting that miracle win, a bit different, but you always have that sense that Australia are going to prevail. This Test series genuinely did not know which way it was going to go. It looked like we were dominating, but we know that India are such a great nation that they'd come out and can definitely ambush us, particularly if the West Indies could in that Test match last season. But really enjoyed it. Absolutely enthralling. From Perth, where we started throwing the axe and saying half the Test team should be chopped out and bring in a new Sheffield Shield team, they did something absolutely remarkable, the Australian Test team. It's only the 8th time they've won a Test series anywhere after being behind after the first Test. It's only the 2nd time since 1970 that we've lost the first Test and gone on to win the series. We've lost the first Test 31 occasions. Only twice we've gone on to win the series. It was this one and the 1997 Ashes. So quite remarkable for us to come from behind there against a great cricketing nation like India. A lot of people now looking back in hindsight saying this Indian team isn't the best Indian team they've ever put out. Some are even saying it could be the worst one that's come to our shores. But I thought they played really well. Australia, just the better side on this occasion. We're number 1 in the world. We hold all the trophies against every nation in Test cricket. We got to get our flowers someday. We're not just some team that rolls over to India. We do deserve to be number 1, and we showed that on our home soil. So it was great to see us flex that muscle, particularly for a lot of Australians who only hear about the Test cricket team in November and December.
Exactly right, mate. And you mentioned there'd been some pretty dour summers in the past, and this one just an absolutely enthralling series. And the nation, we couldn't stop talking about it. So, and around those stats, and coming back from 1-0 down, the other one to it it wasn't close, that first test in Perth. Feels like ages ago. We were belted in that one, and then it wasn't just to come back, draw the series or anything. They held the trophy. We had to win it, and we did. So very exciting as Australians in this one. Now, boys, one of the many, many major talking points to come out of this test, whether it's from the test itself or whether it is looking forward. In this instance, we're going to look forward to the World Test Championships final, as I said, at Lords in June. Beau Webster, the debutant, the slug from Snug. 57 runs and 39 not out. He had 1 for 53, extremely economical in this test match on debut. The question now begs, as we look ahead to England, does he hold his spot when you consider Cameron Green is to come back into this team? I know after the first test, Maxie, you were saying that never has a loss done an Australian player such good in terms of the credentials of Cameron Green because of how much we missed him. Cam Green averages 36.23 with the bat for Australia, 35.31 with the ball at an economy of 3.38. I'll start with you, Maxie. We're looking ahead, the World Test Championship final. We know there's a lot to go under the bridge between now and then, but as it stands, are you picking Webster or are you picking Green, or is there a world where you have them both?
I think it's going to be a debate that will probably go right down to the toss at this World Test going. And I think that, as you mentioned, the reputation of Cam Green has only grown with what his loss to this team actually did, and the pressure that put on Mitch Marsh to step up not only as a lower order run scorer, but as a bowler that he wasn't ultimately able to deliver consistently. And we do believe that's due to fitness, right? So that's not a knock necessarily on his abilities. But I think the one thing that I love about Beau and his potential to go over to England is the fact that he is from Snug and he is from the Apple Isle, where we see conditions that are the most similar to what he's going to be facing over there in England. We see green pitches, we see swing, we see seam. And this is a man who's been really reared in these conditions and done really well in these conditions as well at home. So I think for now, I would love to stick with the incumbent, but geez, Cam Green, it really just did show you the value that a great all-rounder has to this team, because I think what people see from Beau, not just the stats, the run scored, the wicket taken, was the break, was the relief that he was able to offer his other quicks to get that little bit more rest so that they had that ability to come back into those second and third spells and really, really deliver. And so it's going to be one of them. I think it might be the last of Marsh, but I think I'm going to stick with the incumbent for now.
Yeah, for our thousands, nay, maybe even millions of listeners from India and the UK and Europe and all that are sitting there going, Snug, the Apple Isle, what are they talking about? A little town in Tasmania where Beau Webster is from. What Maxie is referring to there is, as you said, pretty green decks often in Sheffield Shield games down there. They'll come out, they'll take the covers off, and you can be batting for survival early on in Sheffield Shield games down in Tasmania. And we got this really tough pitch at the SCG that there was a lot of life in it, lots of opportunity for bowlers, tough going for batsmen, as we obviously saw with the final scores. And Webster came out both innings and just looked so comfortable on that lively pitch. What about for you, Rando? Do you lean towards Beau Webster or Cam Green? Obviously we're assuming Cam Green's fit, firing, ready to go, has some runs and wickets on the board leading into it. Who would you be looking to select for the World Test Championships final?
Yeah, this one's going to be a really tough one, and I'm going to have to lean with Maxi here around how much Snug and the Apple Isle does compare to England, because Beau Webster, when he's gone over there for county cricket in the last 2 seasons, he's absolutely killed it over there. Played for Essex, in the One Day Cup in 2023. He was their leading run scorer and leading wicket taker in that season. Last season, he played Division 2 for Gloucestershire and basically replicated his form, averaging 68.25 with the bat in 6 innings. And with the ball, he took 16 wickets at an average of 21.25 in 7 innings, which was the best bowling average of any Gloucestershire bowler to bowl 100 overs in that season. Albeit it is Division 2, not Division 1, but still bloody good stats there. So he can play in England. You look over at Cam Green. He, of course, is expected to come back late April. I assume he's going to get back into form in the county season because he misses Sri Lanka, obviously. He misses the Champions Trophy and the Shield season as well. On top of that, he hasn't been too great in England either. He averages just 19 runs in 8 innings with a high score of 38. His next worst average is 31 runs, which is in Australia. So a big drop off there. With the ball, he averages 41 with 7 wickets in 7 innings, just 5 maidens in his 62 overs as well, with the best figures, and this is match figures, 2 for 57 in those 7 innings. So for me, Beau Webster, whilst he hasn't played international cricket overseas just yet, he does bowl really well there in England. So I think I'm going to have to go with Webster to keep his spot here.
Tell you what, Rando, you can debate stats and say they're skewed in most sports, but cricket, it's quite difficult to do, and they are pretty telling statistics you've just dropped. So I was a little on the fence, and I was thinking that maybe Beau Webster had the opportunity in Sri Lanka to solidify that spot with a few runs on wicket. Granted, as we know, extremely different conditions on the subcontinent to what they're going to expect in England. But the ones you've read out there, I think Cam Green, in a limited amount of time, he's going to have to try and win that spot back from the slug from Snug, because they're very telling figures. I knew he'd played over there, and I knew he'd done well. I didn't know he went that well. Boys, the next one in the appeal, Scotty Boland versus Josh Hazlewood. Scott Boland, arguably the best backup bowler of all time, cannot get a look in. Gets very few look-ins, I should say, behind this quartet of incredible Australian bowlers, 3 in the pace attack, and then, of course, Nathan Lyon, who'll go down as greats of Australian cricket. Every time he does get an opportunity, he kills it. This time around, Scotty Boland, an average of 13.19 in this series in his 3 tests. Josh Hazlewood, on the flip side, in his 2 tests, averaged 13.16 with an economy of 1.97. It was comfortably the best economy in the series. Boland was the next best, of course, with 2.72. The World Test Championship final, we're looking ahead again. Maxi, you can take the serve here. Who are you picking, Boland or Hazlewood?
So much of this summer has been dominated by fast bowling, and so much of this summer has been dominated by one name, Jasprit Bumrah. But when you look at those numbers and you boil down what's actually happened in this series, you realise that we've got our own Jasprit, and it just might be Jasprit Boland. Such was his impact on this series. I think that the bowling average that he landed on across the 3 matches that he played was only just a margin behind a player who not only won player of the series, but is going to go down in history as potentially the best to ever do it. And for that reason, I think we've got to give the big barrel an extended run here in the team. And that might be tough on the big country boy, Josh Hazlewood. But I think that Scotty's done enough to hold his spot in this team. And I think if we can learn anything from this series, one thing that was also inevitably spoken about so much over the course of this summer was age. And we've got guys not only in our batters, but in our bowlers who are getting closer to the end. They're a lot closer to the end than the beginning of their careers. So I would love to see the big barrel Boland hold his spot. It's not to say that Hoffs shouldn't be on tour or anything like that, or there shouldn't be some kind of rotation. But Scotty, it's irresistible. And I think that when you get him over there in conditions which could suit him well, I would absolutely love to see the big barrel get a run over there to start with.
Fair play, mate. Going with the barrel. Rando, you see it the other way. You think Josh Hazlewood, despite the current injury concern, I'm sure he'll sort it out by June. You like Josh Hazlewood?
Yeah, absolutely. I really do think Hazlewood is the obvious choice here to keep in the side, which is so tough on Scott Boland because they had his bowling average up and he's in the top 10 of bowlers to take 200 plus wickets. So that's really tough on Scott Boland, but I just think you just got to stick with Hazlewood. We're talking about the man who's second in the men's test bowling rankings at the moment. He did average 13.16 this series, as you mentioned, Timmy, which was the second best average, albeit he didn't get over 100 overs bowled in the series altogether. But most incredibly is his consistency overseas. His test bowling average at home is 22.7. Away, it's 27.4. His strike rate is even closer. It's 52 at home and 54.6 away. His striker in England is just as good as Australia with 44.3 compared to 52. And his average with the ball in England as well is still at 26. So Hazlewood proven to do it in Australia as he is in England. With Boland, we have seen him travel and it hasn't been too great. He averages 132 overseas with a strike rate of 192. Of course, in Australia, his average is 12.6 with a strike rate of 31. So that's completely different. He did take 5 wickets against India in that World Test Championship final, so I will give it to him, but he did struggle in the other 2 tests he played in England against England, taking just 2 wickets in 4 innings. Of course, a neutral venue will open it up a bit easier for Scotty Boland, so I can see a world where he does get that spot. But for me, just that average being so far out compared to how good he is in Australia is a big question mark, particularly when he's not up against just an average bowler in Josh Hazlewood. He's up against one of the world's best bowlers.
Geez, Rando comes out firing from New Zealand. He's done his prep there. Rando, do you have the how many tests he's played overseas in front of you? Put you on the spot.
He has played, I believe he's played 6 tests. He's played in South Africa, England, and I think those are the 2 main places he played in. He might have played in the Windies. I might be wrong.
All righty. We'll work on that. We'll get there. It's one of them ones, unfortunately, where you two are going toe-to-toe, and I know it's going to shape, how you sleep at night, probably for the next week, whether or not you speak to your partners, but I just had like a preconceived idea coming into it, and you've got to go with Josh Hazlewood. He's the number 2 bowler in the Test rankings, been there and done it. He was fantastic in this series before the injury. As he said, we hold every bilateral trophy that we can. We hold the World Test Championship. We're in the final again. You've got to go with him, and I genuinely do feel sorry for Scotty Boland, but you've got to go with Josh Hazlewood. So the points go to Rando, but Maxie, you're hard done by, but we're not here to play fair, so we're going to Rando. Maxie, I'll throw one more thing at you. Is there a world where Hazlewood and Boland played and they sat Mitch Starc, or is that unthinkable?
No, I think that really any way that we could get these big quicks into the game is certainly something that we've got to think about. And I think the other possibility, just depending on the type of conditions that we see as well, is does Nathan Lyon, is he an automatic selection? Do we have to have a spinner? I mean, we've literally just finished a Test summer where he's bowled the least amount of overs that he has for an entire series. He took only 9 wickets across 5 games. That's 10 innings, which is, less than 1 innings. I think there was one of those games in Adelaide in the first innings where he didn't even bowl at all. So we're moving into an era of Test cricket, and I know that Australian conditions are going to be different to what they see overseas, where some of these these notions which we've conceived in prior, they might not necessarily ring true. So there's lots of ways that it could work about it, but I guess the main thing is we're all going to sleep a little bit better knowing that we've got 4 world-class quicks, and whoever's on the shelf who's not being used could come in and absolutely rip anyone apart, especially if your name's Virat Kohli.
Yeah, exactly right. Remarkable record against Kohli. And that's the thing, mate. You look at it, and our next topic ties in nicely to that because of the depth of our bowling ranks, our bowling stocks, and Scotty Boland, obviously, he's world-class, but you go after that and you've got Michael Nisha, you've got Jai Richardson, we have unbelievable quicks, and we always have. So we're in a good position. Then you go to India, who there was a lot of talk about Bumrah carrying the Indian attack for the whole summer, and he did. And then he missed out on that final innings with injury, and for the sake of the series, it was a real shame. Up until that point where he missed the 4th innings, he took 32 wickets for the series at 13.06. Pardon me. There's a quote from Usman Khawaja to ABC Sport. To be honest, I was just getting Bumrah'd. It was friggin' tough work. It was tough work. People were asking me, what's going on? I'm being honest. I'm just getting Bumrah'd. You never want to see anyone injured, and it's a shame that he was, but thank God for us because today he would have been an absolute nightmare facing him on that wicket, Khawaja said. And you can see what a big part of their team he was, and everyone felt it. As soon as we didn't see Bumrah out there, we had this sense of feeling that we've actually got a chance here. Not just all right, we're going to win. We've got a chance. That's the quote from Uzi. He said he's the toughest bowler that he's ever faced. So my question to you, Maxie, what does that 4th innings look like with a fit Jasprit Bumrah? Because we saw, you could nearly argue, this is probably a little bit dramatic, it's definitely dramatic, but that's what we're here for, that India nearly lost that Test within 3 overs because they conceded 35 runs, which is the most runs Australia have ever scored in the first 3 overs of a Test match. Krishna, Siraj, I think there was 10 wides in those first 3 overs. They were all over the place. They were getting belted around the park. They ended up getting Konstas, and they were about 1 for 39 not long after. But the damage was almost done by that point. The total dropped to about 110, 120. The pressure was off. Maxie, what does the fourth innings look like with Jasprit Bumrah?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't think you can really argue with Usman's logic that there could have been a different outcome if there was a fit Jasprit Bumrah out there. And I think that there's a few factors there. Not only were we talking about the guy who was probably the only player I can remember in recent history to win Player of the Series, despite losing 3-1. Like, wasn't like a 3-2. He's helped them win 2 games. It was like literally, we've beat you convincingly. We've been the better team, and you have been such a standout player that we have to honour you like this. But the other 2 factors I've got were that Mohammad Siraj, he really got into his work at the SCG. He's finally started to find his lengths and his seam position, and his ability to nip players out there, particularly in the first innings, was quite remarkable. And also Krishna as well. Some of the deliveries that he bowled in that second innings were completely unplayable. We saw the job that he did to wrap up the Australian tail in that second innings as well. You throw in Jasprit to the mix of these players who are really starting to find form in that SCG, and like, we're talking stuff and nightmares. We're talking trophy going back to Bangalore, not down to Jollymont. It could have been a complete different story altogether. But the other thing I want to say is that this is why Test cricket is so good, and this is why we talk about Test series and not just Test matches as well, because it was the work of the entire series which made Jasprit go off and have that back spasm and need to sit out. It wasn't just one particular game where he was coming in with a fitness niggle. And you've got to think about all the different moments of this game, the way that the Australians were able to draw out that innings at the MCG, that partnership between Nathan Lyon and Scott Boland, the extra overs and time that went into Jasprit's back during that time where he was trying to break the partnership. The amount of bowling that he's had to do throughout this entire series is what led to this. And so ultimately, we were sort of robbed, I think, of this potentially high pressure finish where we were really able to see who was going to win. Was it going to be Jasprit Bumrah or was it going to be Australia? But it could have gone another way. But geez, I'm glad as an Australian the way that it did go. Although it is a shame, and I do wish him well.
Yeah, correct, mate. With more support from the Indian attack, he bowls less overs throughout the series. There's less reliance. Maybe the back spasms don't happen. There's every chance. I'm absolutely not a physio, but it adds up to me. Rando, what do you think, mate? Again, we're speculating, but that's half the fun of talking sport, isn't it? It's saying what may have happened if this or this. Could they have won the test if Jasprit Bumrah sits there? Australia won by 6 wickets in the end, but could have been a very different story. How did you see it?
Yeah, I think it was definitely probably be a different story with Jasprit Bumrah bowling. You look at his average in the second innings of each test this series, he averaged 10.81, which is even lower than his 13.06 throughout the series, which is just absolutely crazy. He, of course, took 5 wickets in that second innings at the MCG as well. He would have been stirred on. And to Uzi's point, hope to God that Bumrah wasn't bowling against him. Otherwise, he probably would have got him out for the 7th time this series in 10 innings. So can understand why Uzi only thinks of Jasprit Bumrah when he goes to sleep at night. So just absolutely crazy scenes there. So I think Bumrah could have turned this test match on his head, particularly the way the pitch was playing as well. But as you mentioned, Maxi, just so many things added up from an Australian point of view to get him to that point of back spasms. Him going 2020 mode in that first innings with the bat probably didn't do him any help. But it was a blessing in disguise for us Australians, because I bet it would have been a very tough run chase if Bumrah was in that lineup.
Yes, and in Usman Khawaja's defence, there's 1.5 billion Indians who go to sleep at night with Jasprit Bumrah on their mind as well. So he's not alone in that if that was the case. Maxi, simple one-word answer. If Jasprit Bumrah is fit for the second innings, do Australia win the SCG test?
No.
Ooh. Rando?
No, I don't think we do. I think we just fall short.
I'm the only patriotic Australian here, possibly the only biased one as well. I'll say yes, we do, because I think that we would have played it a lot more controlled. Like, even you saw the way that Sam Konstas got out, that absurd shot. I want to say he reins it in a little bit. That being said, what we saw in his 4 innings in Test cricket thus far, maybe he doesn't because he's a bit of a lunatic. But I'm going to say the Aussies won it. Let us know in the comments, and it'll depend if there's more Indians or Australians watching this who supports which argument. Boys, the final topic, and we normally do talk about a few more topics from Big Bash and around world cricket and things going on, but it's all about the Border-Gavaskar series this week. So we're going all in on it, and there are so many talking points. And the final one, the treatment of Sammy Konstas from the Indian team, in particular Virat Kohli. Konstas was chirping to Bumrah in that first innings from the non-strikers, and I was at that day. Quaj gets out late in day one. The whole Indian team just come at Sammy Konstas. They're in his face. It obviously follows on from the Kohli little shoulder barge at the MCG test there when he had him a little bit rattled. The question, Maxie, is it all just a part of the initiation to Test cricket, or is it crossing the line and is it bad sportsmanship? How do you see it?
It's really hard in this sense, I think, to separate the art from the artist, right? Like we have seen guys like Virat Kohli be what you might call unreasonable towards other players on a cricket field time and time again. But what I don't think we have seen, particularly with respect to the incident with Jasprit Bumrah, was an Australian really sort of put himself there in the forefront and talk non-stop and go after players himself, which in that sense, I think that he's a big boy. He was out there playing with men. And if he wanted to start something, then, something was going to happen. So while it's not necessarily the best look for the game, particularly just with the numbers that cricket create where it can literally be 11v1, I think this might just be part of Konstas' character, and I don't think it's necessarily going to be the last time that he gets himself into these situations. Did I love the treatment of him? No. Did it make for a great spectacle? Hell yes. So I'm really looking forward to the next 10, 15 years of that man's cricketing career, and hopefully he starts getting the runs consistently to back up his behaviour as well.
Well, that's it. If he wants to chirp, wants to do all this, if he can back it up, no one's going to ask too many questions. If he can't back it up, there'll be a lot asked. Rando, India's treatment of Sammy Konstas, fair or unfair?
I think, you give and you take. And, of course, a lot of people are going to be chirping about Konstas being chirpy to the Indian players and it being out of context. I like the whole theatre of it. God, it added more entertainment to it. And you really wanted to see how that game evolved and if Konstas was going to knock the Indians about. God, I really wish he got a 50 there or just managed to chase down the total. That would have been absolute theatre. But I enjoyed every bit of it. I didn't know he was going to be that cocky and just chat up some of the greats of cricket. Disrespectful to the traditionalists, I'm so sure, but as someone who just loves watching cricket, loves the theatre of sport, it was such a great addition. And I think it generally got into the heads of the Indian cricketers, particularly Virat. The sandpaper gag from him I thought was hilarious. I thought that was unbelievably funny. Just shows that he does have a sense of humor and they're not all robots and just reacting to it as it comes. I thought it was great. Everyone gave it. Everyone took it really well. And it spurred on from the very start when the young Indian batter, Jaiswal, came up to Mitch Starc and commented on him bowling too slow. Of course, he put his runs where his mouth was with that 150-plus knock. But that's where it all ignited from. I think Konstas definitely saw that and thought, I need to take on that sort of confidence if we're going to win the series. So I really enjoyed it. I thought, the sort of the bounce back from the BCCI is fair, and it was coming, but I thought it was just great entertainment all around. And you see Jasprit Bumrah taking photos with Konstas' family at the SCG as well afterwards. So I assume that it's all fun and games. Rad even took a photo, I think, with Konstas when they had their famous lunch at Kirribilli House too. So I think it's all part of the game. And it's play on for me.
Yeah, I was a bit indifferent to it, probably from your boys' perspective. A big part of me says, the first thing is that as a cricket fan, I loved it because it was so entertaining to watch. And first and foremost, Sammy Konstas is in no way innocent in all of this. He's obviously chirped up, got a little bit too cocky, as you said, and, he'll learn a lot from this experience. And that's the beauty of Test cricket. You live and you learn from it every time you play another Test match. The only thing I probably didn't like too much was just the context of the situations where it unfolded. And it was the fact that India were being well beaten. So on that day one, when India were rolled for not a lot of runs, Australia were in a great position and they took that wicket. You're getting well beaten, and then Usman Khawaja gets out. Like, you didn't get out Konstas and then you chirp at him. That really annoyed me. I was like, if it was Konstas, spray him all you want, get around him all you want, that's fine. But you didn't get him out at the end of that day one. And then the other one, just with, well, there was the shoulder barge, which we spoke about in last week's show at the MCG. India were getting smashed by Konstas, and that's how Kohli reacts to it. And then the other one is the Kohli with the sandpaper gestures. Again, if you did it at a more like balanced part of the test, even to a lesser degree if they were winning, they were getting smashed at the time. Bumrah was injured. He conceded that, we're not winning this test. And he resulted to that as Steve Smith gets out for 9,999 runs. I just didn't like the timing of it all with India, who were on the back end of it at the time. That being said, as a spectacle, fantastic. And as we said, boys, test cricket, it's only for the toughest of the tough. And we've seen a lot of very talented cricketers over the years, whether it be through a lack of ability, technique, or them not being mentally tough enough to play the game. They don't survive because it's such a tough arena. And that's why we love it so much, because we have these competitive characters. So if nothing else, boys, it was fantastic for the spectacle of the entire series. Now, boys, Rando's trivia. I've got a tremendous record in this up against Maxi. I'm surprised he turned up for the podcast. Maxi, just a reminder to you so that I feel fair. First in, best dressed. Once Rando finishes that question, you can jump in and give your guess. Rando, what have you got for us?
All right. Well, we'll start with the man of the moment, Jasprit Bumrah. He had, of course, an incredible series. He took 32 wickets this series. Which player did he equal the record with for most wickets in a Border-Gavaskar series? So which other player took 32 wickets in a Border-Gavaskar series?
Great question.
Harbhajan Singh.
Gonna have to give it to Maxi, Timmy.
Maxi. Oh, no.
Too busy giving me some compliments there. Was a great question, thank you. But Maxi gets the chocolates for the first one.
Like Australia, I'll come from behind and I'll tear you up here, mate. I'm not flustered, unlike you are when you get behind one. All right, too good. What do you got, Rando?
All right. Here we go. Australia's series win means they currently hold all test trophies against everyone they've played. They've done this twice before. Can you name the last year that they held all the trophies?
2008.
Fuck, he's good. He's rolling. On absolute fire, Maxi. 1-2, knockout. Here's one more for you, Timmy. I'll let you answer this by yourself because you've already lost. It's a dead
petty
rubber.
question. Fantastic.
The petty question for you. Dan Christian, he came out of retirement to play for the Thunder last night. It's the 5th BBL team he has played for. Can you name the 3 teams he hasn't played for in the BBL, Timmy?
The 3 that he hasn't. All right. He hasn't played for the Perth Scorchers.
Yep.
The Hobart Hurricanes.
Oh, no.
Let me give you another
3
go.
seasons for the Canes.
Hey? The Adelaide Strikers.
Oh, 3 seasons for the Canes, mate.
3. Adelaide Strikers. Yes. And the Melbourne Stars. Damn it. All right, boys, I'm sick of this. We need to wrap this up. No, we don't. We're up to part 2. Congratulations, Maxie. You were due a win, so I won't be bitter about it publicly. Guys, part 2, the World Team of the Week. The part of the show that we get you up to scratch with all the best performances in world cricket from the past week. We've scoured every major fixture, both domestic and international, to vote on our World Team of the Week. We give a 3-2-1 for our best performance in the world for the corresponding week, with the vote going towards the race for the Mace. Now, we obviously give heavier criteria, heavier weighting to international cricket than domestic, and to avoid too much major bias, domestic Australian cricket needs to be a superb performance. This week, we're dating back to January 1, and this series we are looking after. Rando, you had Afghanistan, Zimbabwe, 2nd test. Aussie versus India, 5th test. Max, you had the BBL. I had Sri Lanka and NZ ODI, the 3rd T20, and the South Africa versus Pakistan, 2nd test. Rando, you, by the looks of it, have found bugger all in the opening slot for us. Quite weak.
If you can tell me one opener who deserves to be there, then be my guest.
I cannot, but I can pass on to Max Bryden. Maxie, who'd you find?
Couple in the BBL this week, mate. Did my homework, unlike Rando. No, these guys actually did all right. So first one was Chris Lynn, 88 off 51 for the Strikers against the Renegades after he was promoted to open, turning back the clock there. And Finn Allen, the fabulous Kiwi, 68 off 31 over at Optus Stadium. He had a very lean start to the Big Bash tournament, but he's coming good now for his Perth Scorchers. So they're my two openers.
I feel like we've said for Chris Lynn for about 5 years that he's been turning back the clock, but he actually gets runs every year, so the clock's never actually stopped. For myself, a few in here. Will Young in the ODI, 90 not out off 86 balls for the Kiwis. Another Kiwi, Rachin Ravindra, 69 off 39 balls. Good knock there in the T20. Ryan Rickleton, the South African, features in this plenty, as do a lot of South Africans for some reason. Soft opposition probably. 259 in the first innings of that first test for South Africa off 343 balls. I will note they did score 615 and there were 3 tons, but nonetheless, that is a heck of a lot of runs. And Shan Masood for Pakistan, 145 in that test match off 251 balls. Boys, we have come up with Shan Masood and Ryan Rickleton. Boys, middle order batters. Rando, I'll throw to you, mate. What have you found now? Anything?
We've got the slug from Snug, of course. A great test debut from Beau Webster. 57 in the first innings and then 39 not out. Hit the winning runs as well with the boundary. Got to have him somewhere there in the world 11. Craig Irvine, 75 off 163 and 53 off 103 balls in both innings. A captain's knock there, top scoring for Zimbabwe in each of those 2 innings against Afghanistan. And then the last one, Ramat Shah, 139 in the second innings. Now, Afghanistan, they trailed by 86 runs heading into their second innings, and they were down 1 for 1 early when Shah came in with a match-winning knock there for the Afghanis.
Yeah, that is outstanding from Shah. Dare say he's going to feature shortly. Maxie, you've listed half of the Big Bash in your middle order batsman nomination, so what have you found for us?
Yeah, it's funny that there's got a few good performances. First one, Dan Lawrence, who flew in first game of the Melbourne Stars, 1 for 6 from his 1 over. He was actually the bowler where that Glenn Maxwell freak of a catch occurred at the Gabba, which was good. And then he belted 64 off 38 for good measure. Shafane Rutherford, the West Indian, 39 not out off 19, won the game, hit the winning run. I think it was 14 off the final over, and he delivered with the blade, which was great. Jacob Bethel, the young upstart from England, he was everywhere for his Melbourne Renegades against the Melbourne Stars in their derby. He scored 49 off 36 deliveries, bowled 3 overs, none for 19, got a run out, 2 catches. Tim David, 62 not out of 28, won the game for the Hobart Hurricanes against the Adelaide Strikers. Dan Christian, the 41-year-old, turned back the clock for his 5th BBL club. Thanks for that one, Rando. 23 not out of 15 and 1 for 25 off 4. And then my favourite player of the week, not just because his name is almost mine, but Max Bryant has scored in the 70s twice this week for his Brisbane Heat, turning himself into one of the best middle-order finishers in the Big Bash and could be on my radar for future potential Australian honours in a role which is really difficult that he's making a really good crust of. So shout out to Max Bryant with those 2 scores, 72 off 35 and 77 not out off 48.
Yeah, very tidy. Jacob Bethel starring for the Gades. He was everywhere, as you said, Maxie, except in my Supercoach team, unfortunately. So that was a real down point. For myself, Kusal Pereira for Sri Lanka in the T20, 101 off 46 balls. Remarkable knock there. Charith Asalanka, 46 off 24 and 3 for 50 in that T20. Now, you might sit there and go, not that good a performance, but among his 3 for 50 were the opener, the number 3 bat, and the number 4 bat for their Black Caps. So a great performance there. Daryl Mitchell, 35 off 17, and he had 1 for 6 off 1 over for New Zealand. And Temba Bavuma in the Test match, 106 off 179 balls. Our middle order, boys, Ramat Shah, Kusal Pereira, Temba Bavuma, and Beau Webster. Wicketkeeper nominations. Rando, what have you found?
Got to go with the losing keeper here for India, Rishbhar Pant, 40 off 98 balls, 61 off 33 in the second innings. He loves playing Test cricket at the SCG. He has the 3rd highest average of any visiting batsman. And right behind the great Sachin Tendulkar on that list as well, averaging 98 runs. So incredible knock from him. Didn't do too much with the gloves, but that was the wicketkeeper for me.
Yeah, fair play. If he batted for about another 30 minutes, that result could have looked very different. So very, very lucky to get that scalp. I think it was Captain Pat. For myself, well, Maxie, you've got duck eggs as well. They're quite weak for wicket keepers in the Big Bash. For myself, Kyle Verreynne, 100 off 147 for South Africa in that test match. As I said, he was one of 3 tons. So it has gone, of course, to Rishabh Pant with that tremendous knock for India. And our bowlers, Rando, what have you found?
Of course, you got to have Scotty Boland in there taking 10 for, the first Australian cricketer to take 10 for at the SCG since 2020, the first quick since 2003. Then you've got Pradesh Krishna. He was the man who dismissed Steve Smith twice in the 1990s. 3 for 42 and 365 for that. Rashid Khan, I thought, was unbelievable. He took 11 for the match against Zimbabwe. 7 for 66 in that second innings. Career best figures for him, and the 9th best match figures by a test captain in history as well with that 11 for. And lastly, Blessings. I'm going to stuff this up, so I might throw to Maxi for the last name because he loves this guy.
Mazharabani. Yep,
There we go. He was great too. 6 for 95 with the ball in that second innings. Career best figures for him, keeping Zimbabwe in the game.
If you wonder why I rap Rando and why he's on this podcast about how good his stats are, I wasn't actually aware that Krishna and Steve Smith had played together in the 1990s against each other. India got him out twice in the 1990s.
No, whatever.
Fantastic stats there, Rando. I'm sure that'll blow a few minds. Maxi, what have you found in the BBL?
2 performances this week. The first one, Jackson Bird, 4 for 16 or 4 for the Sydney Sixers against the Hobart Hurricanes. And probably my favourite thing coming out of this was a video that I saw of Jackson's son, who is actually called Max, crying because Jackson had dismissed his favourite player, Matthew Wade, from the opposition team. So that was heartwarming. Is it enough to get him into our team of the week? We'll find out soon. And then Xavier Bartlett was borderline unplayable with 4 for 10 for the Brisbane Heat against the Melbourne Stars. Unfortunately, both of those performances came in losses.
Boys, so confession to make before we read out our team of the week. So our 4 bowlers, Blessing Muzarabani, Pradesh Krishna, Rashid Khan and Scott Boland. I wasn't here when we picked the bowlers. I was out and I was prepping for this podcast and I had to do something. And I've come back. You boys didn't put Matt Henry in there. He took 4 for 19 off 10 overs in an international, a one-day international. How in the world does that not get you in there? That is a phenomenal performance. Anyone?
I think the others are all good. I mean, Boland got 10 for, you're not going to beat him. Rashid Khan got 10 for, you're not going to beat him. Blessing's got a 6 for, you're not going to beat him. And Krishna, well, he did it on our shores, so we got to give him that little hat tip of respect, I think, a little bit more about Henry.
He also played with Steve Smith in the 1990s as well, so that's pretty incredible.
Longevity, if nothing else. Well, for my 3-2-1, I gave 2 points to Matt Henry. I've gone 3 to Ryan Rickleton for his double ton and 1, of course, to Scott Boland. So Henry, I don't even know if he can be in the 3-2-1 because he was in our team of the week. Maxie, what did you find for your 3-2-1?
Well, hard to look past the big barrel Boland for 3 points this week, and that could be a bit of local bias, but he was amazing. 2, I think it was very underrated, the impact that Beau Webster had on that game. And if it wasn't for Boland, I think he would have been a clear man of the match. Scored almost 100 runs on debut, including hitting the winning runs and going about it quickly in that second innings, and also took a wicket and some catches. So Big Beau just did it in all facets, and I think that he's deserved of 2 points. And then I've gone to Rickleton, big double ton. That's a really good criteria for getting votes on this show. So there's Scotty, Beau, and Ryan Rickleton.
Yeah, double ton, you'll be in with a chance to get some points for your country in the race for the mace. Rando, what did you find?
Can't go past Scotty Boland. 10 for, of course, so really good from him. For me, another bowler, Rashid Khan, 11 for, a brilliant performance for him. And the second time he's taken 11 for in his career, which is remarkable. And, of course, Ryan Rickleton, 259. Can't go past him. He gets my 1 point.
Alrighty, boys. Our 3, 2, 1 combined in the race for the Mace. Scotty Boland gets the 3, Ryan Rookleton 2, and there were 3 players tied on 2. We're not giving it to Matt Henry because he actually wasn't in our team of the week. Beau Webster, I mentioned that we need to take a bit of Aussie bias out of this podcast, so we're not going to give it to Beau Webster. We're going to give it to Rashid Khan and Afghanistan, which leaves the standings in the race for the Mace. Australia on 10, South Africa in first, South Africa in second on 8, India in third on 6, New Zealand are in fourth on 5, England on 4, then package Windies and Afghanistan are all on 1 point each. It's very similar to the World Test Championship standings, that is. So there you go. Boys, that will do us for the Cricketers Playbook podcast for this week. Maxi, thank you very much, mate, and congratulations on that rare win in the trivia.
Thanks you. Thanks to all the viewers who've been backing me on for a comeback performance in that. We did it.
You did do it, mate. And Rando, very strong on return from New Zealand. Very good.
All statted up for this week, but no, a great little punch out here. And of course, no Test cricket. What am I going to do with myself for the next week or so? I just don't know.
Big Bash is the answer to that question, mate. There, I got one right for the show. How good. Guys, that'll wrap us up for the Cricketers Playbook podcast. If you enjoy the show, you want to support, just like and subscribe to the channel. We'll be, despite the Test series being over, we'll be back next week and the week after and the week after. You can't get enough of us. Plenty more cricket to unfold. We've got the Sri Lankan Test series. We have the Champions Trophy coming up, the Women's Ashes, the end of the Big Bash, heaps and heaps of cricket. So we'll be back moving forward. Thanks for tuning in.